Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Monday afternoon, baseball fans, live from your East Tennessee Media Studio 44. I'm your host, Scott, and it's another exciting episode of Baseball Now. After taking a week off, we're back with an exciting, action-packed week. We've got a long weekly recap from my brother Thomas, and a couple of trade updates for you, and some new power rankings for you. So let's jump right on the end of today's episode and throw it on down to our Atlanta studio. Here's Thomas.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be back in the Cash and Sports McDonough, Georgia studio this week for Baseball Now. Let's go ahead, folks, and dive into it. Since we didn't have a Baseball Now last week or a bullpen show last week, let's go ahead and give you 2 weeks worth of recap. Let's go ahead and recap that week 6, the April 29th through May 5th. So the first game on that schedule, you had just a little crazy. That's Dan versus the Georgia Dominators. Dan picking up a close, narrow victory, 436 to 424 over the Georgia Dominators. That's me. Folks, this game came down to Sunday, literally the last ball game. One home run hit for the Georgia Dominators would have been enough to push over the Dominators over Dan. So this was a really good, interesting battle, just like we thought it would come down to. So with that being said, let's move on to your next game. You had the Warner Robin Bombers, that's Jackson, going against the Demon Ducks. Lindsay, that's Greg. Greg picking up the win, 468 to 408. Jackson moving to 1-5. Greg moving to 4-2. The next game, you had the Macon Chili Dogs pulling off a monumental upset over the Atlanta Express. 427 to Chili Dogs, 358 for Rubens Express. The Chili Dogs now 3-3, and the Express 4-2 after that week. Really interesting ball game there, as the Express was kind of one of those flukes where they were kind of out to lunch the whole week on that game. And the last game, you could really go ahead and laugh because it really was a laughter all week. The Gatlinburg Knights once again going down to Tammy's Wildcats in emphatic fashion. I'll say this game was close for a couple days, and then the Wildcats just blew it wide open. The Gatlinburg Knights moving to 0-6, and the Wildcats moving up to 5-1. So that was your recap for week 6. A lot of interesting games, a lot of blowouts on that week. We did have some trades that went down. The first trade was Wednesday, May 1st, and that was involving my team, the Georgia Dominators, and Jackson Warner Robin Bombers. Jackson trading Juan Soto, an outfielder, in return for Ele De La Cruz, a shortstop and second baseman from the Reds, from the Dominators. That trade was met with no reviews or anything. Just like the trade on Thursday that was pushed through, which I think is really an underrated deal between Greg, the Demon Duck Lindsay's, and the Macon Chili Dogs. The Macon Chili Dogs giving up Mason Miller, a really good relief pitcher that can hit triple digits on his fastball. But you know what everybody says, though, about that? You know, anybody can time up that fastball. It's the location. So anyway, they're getting a really good prospect and a really good relief pitcher, and Zach Eflin, a good starting pitching. And Greg picks up a really good third baseman from the Orioles, third baseman / shortstop Gunnar Henderson. And that is a really good pickup for him. A really good bat. You know, as of right now, it's really hard to pick up bats in this, especially trading. There's not a lot of trades going on. So it's really kind of hard right now to pick those up. So that was your big trades for that week. We'll have more on that on Thursday. We'll have kind of a review of both these trades on Thursday's bullpen show. So that's pretty much going to be the week 6. Pretty much going to be the week 6 review. Now we're going to go ahead and go on to week number 7. This past week, ending on the 12th. The first game, you had the Georgia Dominators. That's me and Jackson's Warner Robin Bombers. 404 for the Dominators, 378 for Jackson. Jackson moves to 1-6. The Dominators move up to 4-3, and a much-needed win. The second game, you had the Atlanta Express pulling away on Sunday from the Demon Ducks Lindsay, 517 to 437. This was a close ball game all week. A lot of trash talking between these two teams. And Ruben's team moves to 5-2. Greg moves down to 4-3. A lot of 4-3 teams right now, and 5-2. There's an interesting stat coming up at the end of my part. The next game, you had the Macon Chili Dogs picking up another win, 451 to 431 over the Gatlinburg Knights. At Scotty. Scotty moves to 0-7. Ken moved to 4-3. That's an interesting. He's on an interesting run right now. Your last game, pretty much a no contest throughout the whole week. Dan's Just a Little Crazy, 551. Tammy's Wildcats at 383. Tammy and Dan both moved to 5-2 with the win and the loss. So on this game, the question is, when the Wildcats face a legitimate playoff managing team, so far they've come up with goose eggs both times, and not just goose eggs. They've been dominated. The Cats have been pretty much snipped and neutered and tamed. The 2 times they've faced actual a very decent manager. So is this a pattern for the Wildcats? Could they be in the playoffs, but could they be, all that talk at the beginning of the season, they could be a one and done in the playoffs. The Dominators right now are just stuck in the sledge in the middle of the pack, not really going nowhere, just like the Demon Ducks. It's 1 week up, 1 week down. The Express, which Express team are you going to get? So that's pretty much the scores for last week. Here's an interesting fact. The Gatlinburg Knights are 0-7. Go ahead and probably make them 0-8 after their beating this week from the Express. My question is for the general manager of the Knights, that would be Scotty. Scotty, when's the fire sale? Everybody in the league, Ken, the Dominators, that's me, Jackson, Dan, Greg, everybody wants to know when and where are you having that fireplace, that fire sale? When's that fire sale going to take place? Might as well go ahead and have it. And what kind of discount are we looking at? Are we looking at 30, 50, 70% off? But let's go. I wanted to take a look at something that I found interesting. So far on the ESPN playoff percentage chance, you have 3 teams right now that are front and shoulders ahead of everybody else. You have the Wildcats and the Express, 76% chance to make the playoffs. Dan at 75. What's interesting, 4, 5, and 6. So you have 3 teams for that last playoff spot. Both the Dominators and Ken are 54%, Greg at 53%. So that just shows you right now that the top is kind of a little top heavy, and then that 4, 5, and 6, kind of interesting, as it's all tied up at 4-3. 3, 5, and 2s, and 3, 4, and 3s, a 1-6, and an 0-7. Really interesting how it's heating up. The question is, can this continue? Will 6 teams be a factor? Will you have a playoff spot that last week of the year come down to one game? And folks need to keep in mind that head-to-head is the first tiebreaker, and then points for is the second tiebreaker. So it is crucial, even if you're beating the crap out of your opponent, or even if you're getting your butt whipped, it is still crucial to put up the maximum amount of points that you can, because that will be a factor and could be a factor for determining if, what seeding you are. If you make the playoffs, if you get a good favorable matchup in the playoffs, the points for. So just because you're getting your butt whooped or you're whooping somebody's butt, it don't mean just to lay down. Because like I've said, that points for is crucial. So let's go ahead and turn the page and look forward to week number 8 and see what we have on the docket this week. This week you have the Atlanta Express against the Gatlinburg Knights. Scotty's going to keep this one close for a while, maybe, and then the Express will just pull away. Then you have the Warner Robin Bombers versus the Wildcats. Tammy, probably a close ball game. Give me the Wildcats. And then you have the Macon Chili Dogs versus Dan's Just a Little Crazy. Give me Just a Little Crazy. But you have the game of the week, the main event of the week, the Demon Duck Lindsay, that's Greg, versus the Georgia Dominators, that's me, Thomas. Interesting ball game. My thoughts on this: I have, as GM for this team, I have to win this game over Greg for bragging rights, to shut him up, and I need to get a W anyway to move up to 5-3 and to knock him down out of the playoffs. So I'm really looking forward to putting that butt kicking on Greg this week. That's pretty much all I've got for the baseball now. For my part, I'll send it back to Scotty in the East Tennessee Media Cash and Sports studio up in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. But before I go, make sure you like and follow us on Facebook at Cash and Sports, at East Tennessee Media, and on YouTube as well. Make sure you give us a follow. Leave us a comment on, if you have any questions about our league. Leave us a comment and stuff like that. And stay tuned at the end of the program for the power rankings. There could be a surprise in there, or maybe not. But stay tuned to the end of the program for the power rankings. And now, let's send it back to Scott in our East Tennessee Cash and Sports studio.
Thank you, Thomas. And as always, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thomas from our McDonough studios. Now let's take a look at the power rankings for this week. We've got a couple of shakeups. Coming in at the number 1 spot will be the Atlanta Express. Coming in at number 2 will be Just a Little Crazy. Number 3 is the Wildcats. Number 4 is the Macon Chili Dogs. Followed by number 5, which would be the Demon Ducks. Number 6 is the Georgia Dominators. And the bottom 2 has been the same bottom 2 we had since the start of the season. The Warner Robin Bombers and the Gatlinburg Knights rounding off at number 8. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. I'm your host, Scotty, and as always, please make sure you click that subscribe and like button, and subscribe to Cash and Sports on Facebook and our YouTube page. I hope all y'all...
This has been a production of Cash and Sports, a division of East Tennessee Media.